And during today's press briefing, Fox White House correspondent, our own Peter Doocy, confronted the White House press secretary, Karine Jean-Pierre, over this strange blunder. And as per usual, she refused to directly answer Peter's question. Take a look.
How is President Biden ever going to convince the 3/4 of voters who are worried about his physical and mental health that he is okay, even though in Las Vegas he told a story about recently talking to a French president who died in 1996?
I'm not even going to go down that rabbit hole with you, sir.
What is
We're
the
going to
rabbit hole?
Go ahead.
He said he talked to Mitterrand.
Go ahead. You saw the president in Vegas, in California. You've seen the president in South Carolina. You saw him in Michigan. I'll just leave it there.
Our very own Peter Doocy is joining us now with more. It's very obvious and transparent. We had Newt Gingrich on this show last night, Peter, and yesterday. He's now, for the first time only now, convinced that he doesn't think Joe is going to make it to November because the cognitive decline of late has been so steep. Do you see it? You're with him every day. What do you see?
Well, first of all, greetings from the bottom of a rabbit hole. It's great that we have connection down here to be able to go live. But it is not a conspiracy to ask questions about mistakes the president makes, considering that it is not one person saying this doesn't seem like it's right. It's 3/4 of those polled by NBC News either have minor or major concerns about his mental and physical health, and that includes half of Democrats. And of course, everybody misspeaks from time to time. However, not everybody is running to be the president, and not everybody is running to be the oldest president ever. And so these things happen from time to time. There are very heavy issues that whoever the president is next time, come January 2025, are going to have to deal with. And again, it's 3/4 of everybody polled by NBC News. As to whether or not he's going to go the distance this campaign, we have no reason to think that he's planning to step aside. If he does, the plan is going to be for the running mate, Kamala Harris, to ascend. You hear people talking about, oh, well, maybe there could be something at the convention. There is nobody running a shadow campaign effective enough that it would make sense for them to slide somebody in there. The last time we really saw a prominent Democrat would be on your show debating Ron DeSantis. It was Gavin Newsom, but you don't hear as much from him anymore.
Well, he's been out campaigning for Joe Biden, to my mind, defending the impossible. In the middle of my interview with Governor Newsom, at one point I just stopped the interview. I said, here's your problem. The guy that you are praising so much is not capable of sitting here next to me and having a conversation on this level, because he's simply not. Now, when you compare the hours that Donald Trump will devote to interviews, and he makes one mistake, boy, if it's Pelosi and Vice President Harris and he mixes it up, they're not taking into account all of this. I can't think of a single event, and you correct me if I'm wrong, that Joe Biden, a clean event where he didn't have cognitive struggles or, difficulty in determining whether to exit stage left or stage right, because that's now become a big problem. I can't think of a clean event. Can you?
Well, the problem now is that they do so little with him. It really is just 1 or 2 on-camera events a week that every word is so heavily scrutinized. When we first got on the Biden beat back in the social distance days, it was like 10 reporters in the room with him. He wanted to talk after every single set of prepared remarks. That was 3 or 4 times a week for 2.5 years. Now it's 3 or 4 times a month at best. And most of the time it's when he is exiting the White House South Lawn exit to go on a Marine One to fly somewhere. And it's you have to shout at him and he's shouting back at you because there's an aircraft 100 feet away. So that does seem to be the strategy, though. In fact, it was somebody in this.
Yeah, but that's the old Reagan trick with Sam Donaldson. Sam? Good to see you. Can't hear you. But, so other presidents have used the sound of a helicopter. Go ahead.
Well, somebody in the second row at the press briefing today asked Karine Jean-Pierre about why there's no Super Bowl interview. Doesn't he want to have this huge audience? why has he done so many fewer press events and press availabilities than all of his recent predecessors? And she said, I can't deny the numbers, that they are fewer, but he's going to try to get out there in new ways. And she mentioned radio interviews and podcasts and social media, which have been used by Barack Obama, Donald Trump, and Biden 2020 very effectively. So these are not new things, but they are basically telling us not to expect to see or hear more from him between now and November.
Well, I mean, I doubt he's going to be going on with Charlemagne Lagarde again, who's been pretty critical lately, as many others have been. He said nobody's actively running a shadow campaign, and I would agree with you. I don't think Gavin Newsom is doing that. I mean, he was very clear that in his mind, if you take him at his word, and I'll take him at his word, that Kamala Harris would be next up. However, does that negate the possibility? You keep hearing the name Michelle Obama. They go to Michelle Obama at the convention. Will you, take up the mantle? Your country needs you. Is there that quiet shadow campaign maybe going on? I've seen no evidence of it. I have no reason to believe she wants to go back to Washington at all. I don't think she liked it the first time.
I think that would probably be optimism by like the 50% or so of Democrats who are polled by NBC who think that Biden, who are concerned that Biden has mental or physical issues that might be a problem for him in a second term. But from people that we hear from, that's not something that Michelle Obama wants, even though, as we've seen in the post-presidency, with just book sales alone, she is probably the most popular Democrat alive.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. We'll certainly be watching. Peter, thanks for asking. Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.